And this is the promised awkward appearance of the teacher actually on your screen, here to show you how to use the various resources you've been asked to muster to this point. And so that includes an outline, a stack of well-written note cards that correspond very closely to that outline, and an open Google Doc, which will eventually become the draft of your either context essay, if you are doing this for U.S. history, or your document analysis if you are in fact a sophomore. The great thing about this is that these skills apply to both grade levels, and anything you learn now, I promise, will be valuable to you later. It's an excellent process for bringing to bear research to support accurate footnotes, which are of utmost importance to us. So please, I urge you, use these procedures for optimal results. So the first thing I would like to do is direct your attention to the outline. And what you'll see here is I've just filled it out with a template because for purposes of demonstration, it did not make sense for me to write an entire and comprehensive outline. And so you'll see here the same basic structure that either my handout indicated to you or perhaps that your teacher explained to you, except for right here, the beginning of really section 2 of my essay, which will come in as Roman numeral 3 on your outline. And what I'm showing you here are note cards written by Lindsay Lutz, excellent note cards. And she did some research into the state of technology in the 1990s as something really relevant to her oral history interview. And so I grabbed a bunch of those note cards and came up with a potential paragraph that she could conceivably write based on that research that she did. And so I'm calling this Section 2, Technology and Change, the Rise of the Personal Computer and Its Impact, something that really happened and got into full swing in the 90s. And the paragraph that I intend to exemplify in this is indicated by the letter A. And this paragraph will be about the arrival and impact of the personal computer, particularly as it relates to the increasing importance of the World Wide Web. And then you will see me at the end of that paragraph, again, using note card supported information, set up for a transition into a subsequent paragraph about the impact of digital technology on music in the 90s. Digital technology that, of course, was distributed in huge volumes by the world, or on the internet and the World Wide Web. If you don't have an outline that looks something like this yet, you might consider, depending on the time available to you, writing one that actually does have detailed plans for where your note cards will go and how those note cards will relate to the themes of actual paragraphs. I hope that by this time you have actually done that and that you can therefore proceed with confidence, that you can put your energy really into the writing and to the creation of technically correct footnotes. Now, let's direct our attention to, so I have here actually a note card, idea note card, communication and sharing words and music. That doesn't correspond to a real note card. That's just an example of how, for example, how you can include in your outline ideas. But point number 2 in the paragraph actually is supported by a real note card. And so now, for my purposes, I have to do this on the computer. You should have hard copy 3x5 ruled index cards that look like this. And some of the things I like about this note card include the fact that she has the author's name for the source in the upper left-hand corner, as you were directed to have. She has a nice keyword right there on the center of the card. She put the number of the card in the order that she wrote it. And then she has a direct quotation that I assume is accurate, and some of her own paraphrasing all on this note card with the page number from the book that she used. Obviously, the page number won't be possible if you're using a website, but anytime you're using hard copy, we love to see that page number. And so take a minute. I'll give you time to look at this note card. I will refrain from reading it out loud, as that is incredibly irritating when people do that. And then I'm going to show you how this note card actually supports writing. So you've seen the outline, you've seen the note card, and here is my document where I'm going to actually write a paragraph based on this note card. So I've pasted in my pre-written topic sentence. So rather than have you suffer the torture of actually watching me type, I wrote this in advance and I'm pasting it in. But you could imagine actually writing this in real time. And here again, I'll refrain from the powerful temptation on my part to read this out loud, word for word, and just leave you a moment to look at this topic sentence and notice the extent to which I'm trying to use that to set up the theme of the paragraph. Now, I'm going to proceed to the next sentence. And this sentence will actually be based on a note card. So I've copied the information and I'm prepared to paste it. But let's go back and look at this note card. So here it is again. Computers became the modern way to communicate, and there I am. I'm doing it. I'm reading the note card. I can't help myself. Just take a look at that note card and then see how it appears as support for this sentence that I'm now going to paste in. All right, so I've just used an idea from my research. Having done so, I'm obligated to do a footnote and to actually create a footnote using Google Docs. You'll go to Insert, scroll down to Footnote, and if you're a key command person, Command Option F is always good. And right there, you'll see that you have a superscript 1 that corresponds to a blank that's waiting for a footnote. Now, rather than going through the laborious process of manually writing in the footnote based on your use of the source, what you need to do is go to Noodle Tools. And what you see here is a stack of various projects I have. You will open your project, which I'm calling for this purpose, Sample for Note Card Use. And I'll center that up. So I'm in the dashboard. You may have more of this information filled in than I do. The thing that I'm interested in, though, will be the sources. Click your sources. And if you have followed the rule, and that's capital T and capital R, the rule, you have assiduously entered every source upon which you have based note cards in Noodle Tools, and you have done so carefully, and you therefore have a stack of correctly formatted source citations sitting here in Noodle Tools in your sources, under your Sources tab. So this first note card was from Joe Saltzman, this source. So I will go to Options, and I will select Footnote Format, and there they are, correctly formatted footnotes. Now what you'll do here is highlight. For the first time you use a footnote, you will highlight the full footnote, carefully leaving out the number 1, because to include that would be redundant, as Google Docs has already provided that for us. All right, hit Command C, or if you prefer to use the tab, scroll, select Copy, and go back to your essay. And there we are, footnote 1, Command V, boom, it's pasted in. There it is, an accurately formatted footnote. Let's do some cleanup. It defaults to font size 10. I think that's a good thing. We can leave it at that. It would be good, however, to make sure the font is standard. So I'm using Cambria. I'm going to ask my students to do Cambria. If your teacher prefers Times New Roman, do that. So, make sure that the text in your footnote is compatible with the text in the main body of your writing. Now, there's one more step. We have to insert the page number. You see these brackets? Don't leave the brackets in. So you'll delete those. And I actually forget what page number the note card indicated. So I'll look at my note card. Page 153. Back to that, and I'll type in 153. You'll notice the comma in place. I'm not going to mess with that. And so there we have a correct footnote. At the risk of maybe boring you a bit, but in the interest of really being clear on this, I'm going to show you the rest of the paragraph. And so writing onward. So I've written this sentence, which was based on this note card. So take a moment, but so I'm noticing, oh, this is a new source, Nancy Hendricks. I'll try to remember these page numbers. I think the piece that I'm using came from 575. And so we go back to my writing, where I'm just going to acknowledge that I kind of got from this source a characterization of the rapidly growing World Wide Web. So back to insert, footnote, and you'll see it creates a space right under the previous one, nice and neat. And so I go to my friends in Noodle Tools. I'm going to close this one because it was a different source. So, oh, there she is, Nancy Hendricks. We used that. So I'll pull down footnote format. This is the first time I've used information from her book. So I go to the full footnote. I highlight everything right up to the period. Command-C. We'll close it this time. Back to the essay, or excuse me, back to the footnote location. I'll paste it in. And I'm going to clean up the font, returning to Cambria. And I put in the accurate page number, which was, as you will recall, 575. Notice the period at the end, that is correct. And so we now have two accurate footnotes in a row. The excitement is not over, however, as we proceed with this paragraph. And in this paragraph, or this, excuse me, in this sentence, I'll do something that I urge my students to do, and they rarely do it. I actually acknowledge in my prose the source that I'm using. This guy, Joe Saltzman, has been so helpful to me that I incorporate him into my actual writing, and I include a statistic. Anytime you see a statistic like that, I know that you, the student, are certainly not pulling that out of thin air, and you're probably not generating it by original resource, and so I'll be expecting a footnote. And so back to the cards. And that was the previous one. Oh, and there it is, our statistic right there on a note card. This happens to be a direct quotation that I didn't end up using as such, so I don't need to put it in quotation marks in my essay. This is page 151. All right. And so we go back to the paragraph. We go to insert. We select footnote. It creates the insertion point for the actual footnote information. And this is Saltzman, so I highlight Saltzman because that's what we just used. We go back to footnote format. Now, this is the second time I've used Saltzman. I don't need to keep putting in full footnotes for Saltzman. That gets ungainly. It clutters up the paper. And so in this case, I will go to the shortened footnote. Highlight the section that we were hoping for. Copy it. Back to my essay. Paste. Clean up the font. And this will become very routine. You won't even need to think about this. And then put in the correct page number, which I believe was 151. A period at the end, as that is correct. And there we have a short form of the footnote. Now, as it happens, the next one that I'll be demonstrating is from Hendricks. So you will see how a short footnote works again. If, however, we were using Saltzman consecutively, the current standard is actually not to use IBID. Some of your parents may have been trained in that, and I was back in the 80s. But for the most part, form and style manuals just indicate keep using the short form. It's easier for the reader to follow. Oh, I see that I have a title spelling incorrect, so I'll make that right. In any case, I go back to my original essay, and in this case, I'm going to, in the interest of time, I'm going to paste in 2 sentences at once. You can take a moment to read those. And this reference to Napster, actually it's 3 sentences. I just pasted in 3 sentences. This reference to Napster right here was supported by a note card. So I go back to my note cards, which for you will not be on a computer the way they are here for the purposes of the video. They will be actually hard copy note cards that you'll be writing through. And there it is, my Napster card. It's Hendrix, page 613. All right, so I am going to actually finish this paragraph with a footnote. That won't always be the case. You'll notice that my use of that information serves as both hard information that I'm obligated to cite, but it's also very much part of my plan for how the essay is proceeding. So it's not as if I'm just turning Hendrix writing into, slightly different wording and then plopping it on my reader. It's all part of my plan, a plan that I've spelled out very thoroughly in advance on my outline. So back to insert, footnote, and there it is, our final footnote for this paragraph. I will go to Hendrix, options, footnote, and of course, as you can anticipate, the short one, copy. I'll go ahead and close this. Essay, paste. I think it was 613. Last thing to do, clean up the font. Boom. And so there you have it. A paragraph with a pretty healthy mix of 4 footnotes, each of them correct and based on formatting from Doodle Tools, inserted conveniently by Google Docs. A couple of things here that I tried to exemplify in the course of doing this paragraph. You'll notice that there's a mix of 2 sources. Whenever possible, try to incorporate multiple sources into any discussion. If you are in fact just altering note card after note card from the same source, the teacher may suspect that you are in fact just sort of warming over someone else's writing. On the other hand, if you're weaving together a tapestry of different sources into a coherent argument, that looks like real scholarship. And again, I direct your attention back to the fact that I acknowledged by name the author of one of my sources. That's a good habit. You don't have to do that for every source. In fact, if you did, it would make for very tedious writing. However, for really influential sources that you use heavily, it's a good thing to do. I hope this proved helpful. I know it's been a somewhat long instructional video, but doing this stuff right is worth the effort. There's nothing more uncomfortable for a teacher who cares passionately about teaching you the correct way to do this than to see footnotes or endnotes that really aren't executed correctly. And there's a lot of hints. There are many ways in which poorly executed efforts of that type become evident. And so follow this method, you'll be in great shape.